All right, a quick introduction to this truly profound video. I just want to say that January 13th, this video was originally produced prior to January 13th, and it ended up being a step in the trail of science. God was overwhelmingly pointing to this date, and so it was believed that this would be the date for the predicted dirty bombs and evacuation in Manhattan. And what I mean is God was overwhelmingly pointing to this date in terms of this. And this is how it works, all right? It works in terms of developed trails of signs. Because it would be one thing for God to tap someone on the shoulder and say, hey, tell the world that such and such is going to happen on such and such date. But what good would that really be? Besides being more proof for the righteous Christian God of the Bible, which isn't insignificant. And on that note, in terms of an evangelism tool, this video will be incomparable to anything else. But with the prediction when it comes to pass. But what God is doing here is through the connections and through the developed trails of signs, which involve steps. And it's not possible to know whether the date that God's pointing to ahead of time will be the end of the trail of signs regarding that particular event, in this case, the dirty bombs in Manhattan, or a step in which there will be clear and relevant signs on that date that will reveal more information that will further develop the big picture of signs and further develop down the line in terms of time, the trail of signs leading to the date of the end event that God is pointing to. By doing that, well, first of all, none of God's signs, well, maybe I shouldn't say none. Maybe there's the odd exception that I'm not thinking about. But God's prophetic signs cannot be properly or fully understood without their context and connections with the other prophetic signs. And this is the thing that the vast majority of people that are, quote unquote, watching for the signs do not appreciate, which is why they have missed the vast majority of the prophetic signs. They're not even recognizing the vast majority of the prophetic signs, many of which are contained in this diagram, for example. I shouldn't say many. This isn't even a fraction of a percent of the signs. Don't get me wrong. There's literally thousands, and the majority of them have been completely missed by those who are watching for signs because they're not appreciating what I just said. But in order for all of that to happen, in order for God to communicate all of this, he needs to point to these dates ahead of time, and it's not necessarily possible to know ahead of time whether or not it will be the end of the trail or another step. Now, in this case, I'm pretty sure the date didn't come and go, and I recognized prior to the date that it would only be a step. And maybe I even mentioned that in this video, I forget. Regardless, it was a step, and I'll just say briefly because I explain it in other videos. This was the day of the comet and its perihelion, which symbolizes the comet. And the comet itself is a nuclear explosion symbolic sign, because the comet is about its nucleus that exploded, it fragmented after it reached perihelion or during perihelion, etc. It had a nuclear shadow tail and all that, okay? Also, it was the day that the moon eclipsed, or rather occulted, Mars. Mars is symbolic of war in God's signs because of an ancient astrology, that being the case, including ancient Semitic astrology. And also, God has revealed through his pattern of signs regarding the predicted events of the dirty bomb explosions. He's been revealing this pattern of moon signs, and specifically after this, it was later recognized that it was going to be the half moon. Prior to that, it was recognized that God was pointing to the blood moon lunar eclipse, which was on March 13th, 2025. But before that, it was recognized that even that would be a step pointing to the next half moon phase. Long story short, the following half moon phase after the blood moon lunar eclipse, which will be on March 22nd. Well, all right. And so that's a brief synopsis of this prophetic sign that occurred on this date. Now, this date connects with 68 days to Well, also, first of all, it connects with 2 months and 9 days, which hints at 29, and God uses the number 29 to hint at the moon, or to symbolize the moon, as it has a lunar cycle of 29 and a half days. Also, if God were to symbolize the events of 9/11, in other words, symbolize 9/11 with only two numbers, it would be with a 9 and a 2, and including either 29 or 92, as the 2 is 1 and 1. The predicted 2 dirty bombs in Manhattan on March 22nd will be the follow-up judgment that was warned of when the 2 planes struck the 2 towers on 9/11 in Manhattan. But also, this connection is 68 days, and the number 68 is the equivalent of the word bomb in Hebrew gematria, and is equivalent of the name Obama in Hebrew gematria. And God is using Obama and his name to hint at Obama, which is why, for example, the Barak bombings in Beirut, the Beirut bombings hint at Barack. And they were exactly 444 months after the first UN session in New York City, and the Barak bombings were about the peacekeeping UN troops, or affiliated with the UN. Now that date, that bombing that hinted at Barack, the Barak bombings, was 21,600 minutes before the Capitol building was bombed in 1983. And 21,600 minutes is 15 days, but it hints at 216. 216 is 6 times 6 times 6, the number that symbolizes the Antichrist, but Barack Obama was born on the 216th day of the calendar year. Also, though, and most importantly, the name Barack is equal to 216 in English gematria. And so from the Barack bombings, we have a number that symbolizes the name Barack to the Capitol building bombing. And that's because the Capitol building bombing was done by the May 19th perpetrated by the May 19th Communist Organization, of which Barack Obama was a member of in 1983, before it disbanded in 1985 and Barack Obama moved to Chicago to follow in his father's footsteps in community street activism, his father being Frank Marshall Davis, who was a leader in the communist movement in Chicago before he moved to Hawaii and knocked up Barack Obama's 18-year-old mother. All right. Marshall, speaking of which, hints at martial law that's coming as a result of things, including the predicted dirty bombs. But there'll be more events that will also lead to martial law in the future. So anyway, that's a long story short. I explained more, but when the prediction comes to pass, the purpose of it is to prove these controversial things that I'm explaining, including the fact that Barack Obama was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization, which, by the way, was a spin-off of the Weather Underground, which was led by Bill Ayers. And Barack Obama got his start in politics in Chicago with the help of Bill Ayers, whom he met at Columbia University in New York City. And that's another long story. But Bill Ayers wrote his autobiography, and that's a fact. It's not a conspiracy theory. You can look that up. Bill Ayers is on video. You can find that even on YouTube, of him saying that he wrote Barack Obama's autobiography, Dreams from My Father. Well, anyway, not to get any further off on track, but I had to, I guess, establish the significance of the 68 days, which is symbolic of bomb and Obama. And that gets us from this date to the prediction. Now, the rest of this video will explain this amazing information. You will be astounded. All right, this video here, this explanation is a personal favorite of mine, as you'll see, and it is amazing beyond words. I do not have the words. So just to confirm first, this email is composed on January 5th. The post date of the video also proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time. All right. Now, God is pointing to January 10th, 2025. We knew that God was pointing to this date prior to January 3rd. On January 3rd, we learned why God is pointing to January 10th. On January 3rd, it was announced by the judge in the Trump court case related to Stormy Daniels and the hush money, that the sentencing would occur on January 10th. Now, this video isn't about the significance of all of that, especially in regards to President Trump. What I'm talking about here is the predicted suitcase nuke explosion in Manhattan on January 13th, 2025, which is 3 days after January 10th. Now, January 10th, 2025, will be exactly 42 years, which is prophetic because in the Bible, in Bible prophecy, the Antichrist's period is said to be 42 months, a symbolic 42 months, and we are already past, believe it or not, we are already past the final 42 months. I know for those that know things about Bible prophecy, how surprising that is for you. I know, okay? But I'm not going to explain it in this video because I explained it too many other times in other videos. But when the prediction comes to pass, it'll prove what I am saying. Okay, the 7 years was between the two eclipses and the beginning of Trump's presidency. It was 2017 to 2024, and it was only symbolism. And it's case closed when the prediction comes to pass, because believe me, I know far better than you the reason and purpose for the prediction. Make no mistake. Okay, it's end of debate. I mean, it's time to discard the 7-year timelines. Case closed, period. Okay, I know what I'm talking about, and the prediction will prove that this is God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. Okay, so enough of that. So anyway, we've got a 42 years connection, which is symbolic of the Antichrist. And this date, January 10th, 110, will be exactly 42 years after the release of U2's song, New Year's Day, the first single from their album War, their album named War. U2 would go on to produce an album named Joshua Tree. And that's relevant because Joshua in the Bible died at the age of 110, which is what is symbolized by the date 110. Furthermore, Joshua led the Israelites into the promised land on the date 110 in the Hebrew calendar. As I say in the next sentence, the date 110 symbolizes Joshua, who led the Israelites into the promised land on the date 110, and who died at the age of 110. Trump is a type for Joshua. On the day that the 110 stories collapsed on 9/11, Trump called into the local channel news station and trumpeted how, inadvertently, that his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in lower Manhattan. Okay, that's Trump is, the word Trump in archaic English means trumpet or the sounding of a trumpet. And Trump's presidency and election campaign were synonymous with his border wall of security. And when he left office, his border wall of security collapsed in God's judgment. Because the Israelites marched around the walls of security, and before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment, they blew trumpets, and then the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. In other words, Trump is a big trumpet in God's signs, trumpeting the impending collapse of America's walls of security. The sentencing on January 10th, incidentally, is symbolic of this. It's symbolic of God's judgment. What is it? It's in a courtroom. What happens? The judge brings down his gavel and declares the judgment. It's symbolism. It's trumpet judgment. By the way, there are trumpet judgments in the book of Revelation regarding the destruction of America, because actually, believe it or not, America is clearly mentioned in Revelation chapter 8, which is the chapter about the 7 trumpet judgments. Okay, so Trump has been trumpeting the collapse of America's walls of security and judgment. Okay, you get the idea. Now, so that's why the symbolism in Trump being sentenced, especially on the date 110, which is about Joshua and walls of security collapsing in God's judgment. Trump is predicted to die, incidentally, 2 times 17 days after the 2 times 17 charges sentencing. 2 times 17 hints at the 2 planes that struck the 2 towers 17 minutes apart on 9/11. And the reason for that is because the flood judgment in the Bible began on the date 2/17, the 17th day of the second month, as it says. That's why the charges, the 2 times 17 charges, stem from allegations by Stormy Daniels. Daniel being a hint at the book of Revelation, a prophet, but also this is flood symbolism. That's why 2 times 17 charges, because and the name Stormy, as in the flood. Trump is predicted to die 2 times 17 days later. Okay, that's another story. February 13th, 2025. The implication of this is that the civil war that we are currently in will escalate after Trump's death. Also, that's the reason for connecting all of this to the album War. Because again, this comes from the 42nd anniversary of the release of the album War by U2. Okay? Also, U2 took their name from the US spy plane that crashed. Trump is predicted to die after Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash. But also, the U2 spy plane crash was one of the major events in the Cold War. More war symbolism. So there is a song on U2's War album named Refugee that speaks of America as being the promised land. And this is extremely prophetic because the spiritual founding of America were the Pilgrims who founded the nation on a relationship with God and the Bible, the only other nation other than Israel to do so in history. The Pilgrims saw their crossing of the Atlantic and escape from persecution from the King of England as analogous to the escape from the persecution of the King of Egypt with the Israelites and their crossing of the Jordan River into the Promised Land. The New World was the Promised Land for the Pilgrims. The least theologically inclined founders, Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, wanted the seal of America to depict the Israelites leaving Egypt. And they were the least theological, if you will. In other words, this understanding of the founding of America, and Benjamin and Thomas Jefferson were a long time after the Pilgrims. This founding was for a long time understood that America was a promised land. Okay? And so the story goes on and on. I mean, Ronald Reagan even recognized this. He mentioned this in his farewell address, and he mentioned John Winthrop's sermon, before the Pilgrims departed their ships, which was derived from Deuteronomy chapter 28 in the Bible, the words from Moses from God to the Israelites before they crossed the Jordan River. And they regarded God's promises of either blessings or curses, depending on whether or not they would obey his commandments or not. It's a reflection between blessings and curses, which is what the number 11 symbolizes. It's a reflection. Which is why John Winthrop delivered this sermon when he led the 11 ship flotilla. That's also why it was 101 passengers on the Mayflower. And why, although they were destined for Virginia, they had an arduous, much longer journey than anticipated of 66 days that led them to Massachusetts, and 66 is the 11th triangular number. In triangular numbers, the last number in the 11th row is 66. Also, this is why the big serial number on the propeller of the Titanic on its maiden voyage, which mirrored the maiden voyage of the Pilgrims, the 101 Pilgrims, the big serial number on the Titanic is 101. John Winthrop, the first governor of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, lived on Governor's Island, which today is Logan Airport. And it was from Logan Airport that Flight 11, with its crew of 11 people, flew into the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state to join the Union, in New York City, made of 11 letters. God was warning through the 9/11 events of all of this. So when we speak of this song by U2, Refugee, that speaks of an Irish refugee wanting or leaving and going to the promised land, America, this is very symbolic and prophetic in God's signs, given if, like I'm making the case for, that this song, Refugee, is indeed prophetic. But that is the big clue, is that the lyrics of the song have this theme. Because that's the reason for U2. Because U2 is known for being this Irish band that captivated America, took America by storm, had #1 hits, etc. And the symbolism, though, in them being the Irish band is this refugee symbolism, because Ireland is known for being the place from which the masses of refugees came in the immigration waves in history. Okay, so you get the symbolism here now, right? It's U2 we are talking about, this famous Irish band that took over America and has, by the way, incidentally, repeatedly sung about America in their songs, in other albums too. I mean, that's one of the themes of their music, in their lyrics, is America. Okay. So, this song is from this album War, which I've established is prophetic because of it being the 42nd anniversary on the date 110, which is relevant because of the album Joshua Tree, like I explained, all right? Now, the song's first lyric in the song, and its chorus, because the song begins with its chorus, begins with the words, woe, woe, repeated twice. Woe, exclamation mark. That's extremely prophetic. God is using this woe in his signs, this woe symbolism. This word woe, exclamation mark, is used in the context in the Bible of extreme judgment from God. U is the 21st letter in the alphabet. And so U2 hints at 23. Which is, by the way, incidentally, why they opened the new Sphere Theater in Las Vegas, Sin City, Atomic City, which is why their new song, Atomic City, they made it for this. That's why the Sphere Theater is known for, famously, costing $2.3 billion, which hints at 23, which is what the name U2 hints at, 23. The theater also has, from what I recall, 23 executive box seats, or suites, I should say. Okay, so the reason for 23 is that the number of the basketball president is 23. The basketball president wore 23 in high school. On the date 110, U2, which hints at 23, released War, the album War. The date 110 and 23, okay, because it was in 1983 on the date 110, not 2025, right? On the date 110, 1983, U2, which hints at 23, released War. This hints at 11 and 23, which, as I explained earlier in another paragraph, hints at 1123, because it is the 188th prime number, and H188 is the word in the Hebrew concordance for woe, exclamation mark. Okay, so the band's album and the band's name hint at woe, and one of their songs in the album begins with woe, woe. And I'm making the case that it's prophetic because it talks about America, and it being the promised land, which was, in fact, indeed the promised land for God's people, the pilgrims. It became God's nation of disciples, and on and on. It was used by God to spread the gospel around the world in the 19th and 20th centuries. It was God's instrument. Okay? But it has now turned away from God, and like ancient Israel, will now be destroyed. And so, that's why we have this connection through U2. Because this is the band that sings about America in a positive way, mostly, I'm pretty sure, including in this song, as it refers to America as being the promised land, which is extremely prophetic, as I've explained now. Okay? Now, not only that, though, it was released on the date 110, which hints at 11, and I explained the connection between the number 11 and the promised land and the pilgrims. Okay. Now, and it was the promised land for Irish immigrants, too. The home of the Statue of Liberty was a symbolic beacon for them. I'm about to get to that, actually. Okay, so let's not jump ahead. And by the way, the sphere, the 2.3 billion sphere, and U2, symbolically opening it with the song Atomic City, right? That's also symbolism for the coming Antichrist leading the world and the explosion in New York City. Because it's an atomic, because the reason why Sin City is nicknamed Atomic City is because it's 60 miles south of where the first nuclear bomb was tested, the Trinity bomb. Speaking of religious overtones. So, War is U2's third album. Whoa, wait a second. I didn't even mean to do that. Yeah, so U2 through the number 23 does connect with the Trinity bomb. Well, not through the number 23, but through the sphere and the song Atomic City. And we are talking about war. The bomb was made for war, the Trinity bomb. And we are talking about U2's third album, named War, which hints at Trinity. Oh, wow. I didn't expect something that deep. Whoa. Okay, and the name War is made of 3 letters. That's another confirmation of the prophetic significance of the third album here. I had no idea, though, that it pointed to the Trinity bomb. I had no idea. It really does. It points to the Trinity bomb, the first nuclear bomb. That's why the open sphere. Oh, wow. Okay, so get this. You're going to go, hopefully you'll be as excited as I am by the time I finish telling the story here. 3 days after January 10th, 2025, the 42nd anniversary of the release of the first song from the War album, is the date it is predicted that war will begin and there will be refugees in the Promised Land in New England after the suitcase nuke is detonated in New York City, the home of the Statue of Liberty that was a beacon to Irish immigrants. Okay, did you get that? So the reason for connecting to the 42nd anniversary, again, is the date 110. And that's confirmed through Trump because he is a type for Joshua, and the band U2 has the album named Joshua, and on and on. The 42nd anniversary also reveals adding 3 days because it was their third album. And the name War is made of 3 letters, but also, as we now know, U2 is pointing to the Trinity bomb. which was made for war. That's also why we add 3 days. And that gets us to January 13th, the subject of this video, which is the predicted date of the suitcase nuclear bomb in New York City, the home of the Statue of Liberty that was a beacon to Irish immigrants and refugees. Wow. There's more here. Well, here's the lyrics. Whoa, whoa, she's the refugee. I see your face. I see you staring back at me. Whoa, whoa, she's the refugee. Her mama say one day she's gonna live in America. Sorry. I was, when I was 13 and 14 years old, I was a big U2 fan, and I owned the cassette for the album War. And this was in a time when we had Sony Walkmans and we didn't have infinite access to all of the music like we do today. So, you end up playing the cassettes you own over and over. And I had forgotten about this song until I looked up the details of the War album. The reason why the War album came to me, because recently it was New Year's Day, and I woke up one morning thinking about the song New Year's Day because of this, history of mine. And that made me realize that because God does this, he will often plant these ideas in my mind that end up turning out to be leads to prophetic stories he's telling. This being a prime example. Okay, and so that's how I can know how the song goes, okay? So anyway, so you get the idea. She's going to sail away to America, live in America. Okay, let's see. Whoa, whoa, that's the chorus. Whoa, whoa, her papa go to war. Her mama say one day he's going to come back from far away. Okay, anyway. Her mama so say she's going to live in America. Yeah, America, whoa, whoa, she's a refugee, okay? There's a lyric in here, though, that mentions it being the promised land. I think it's at the beginning. Here it is. Okay. She's waiting for her man to take her by the hand and take her to this promised land, America. Okay. The final song on the album is titled 40. And, by the way, it was the fourth released and, the final song, the final song on the album is 40, but it was also the final released single song as a single, and it was the fourth single. Okay, and Trump is known for his tower on 40 Wall Street, which he mentioned on 9/11 when he called into Channel 9 News. 9 pairs with 110, and the date 100 and the date 110. Okay, so the reason, so God develops this big picture of signs, patterns, and connections through pairing certain numbers together, as I've explained before. And 2 of these numbers are 9 and 110. And I know this because I've been studying his big picture of signs from morning until night for more than full-time hours for 7 years. And God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works on the principle of second and third and this is confirming a matter as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be analysis of God's prophetic signs. And if we think about it, one simple way in which God would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together. So this is 9 and 110. And the reason is because one reason is that Trump on 9/11 called into Channel 9 News and trumpeted how his tower on Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan, and Wall Street was named after the 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. In the Bible, Trump is a type for Joshua, and Joshua led the Israelites around the walls of security before they blew trumpets, and the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. Joshua died at 110, which is why on 9/11, 110 stories of the Twin Towers collapsed in God's judgment. Also, Joshua led the Israelites into the promised land on the date 110. And the date 110 is also the day that Jesus, in his first coming, arrived officially as the King of the Jews. And so the second coming is symbolized by two dates, 110, if you will. And that's why two towers of 110 stories. Okay, it was symbolic of the second coming. Now, the date 110, 2025, connects to Trump's press conference at 4T Wall Street on January 11th, 2024. That was after the day that the trial ended, the trial over the records and loan applications that cited 4T Wall Street. Okay, and it ended after 44 days. This was the allegation that Trump had exaggerated his records, but his lawyers proved in court that this wasn't true, and there was no harm done to the bank. It was in other words a witch hunt. But the point is, symbolically, that it ended after 44 days, and the media, that was part of the headlines, even some of them. It was in the news story how the trial took 44 days. And then after, Trump spoke at a press conference at his 4T Wall Street tower, which made this a massive prophetic sign, okay? Now, God, prior to January 11th, 2024, had been overwhelmingly pointing to this date. It was the center point of all of these eclipses. I'm not going to get into it, I guess. But also, on this day, the coach for the Patriots was fired. The New England Patriots are by far the biggest important sports team in God's prophetic signs. And sports signs are extremely important in God's signs. Okay? American sports signs. Anyway, that's another story as well, why that is. It's God's brilliant way of being able to communicate so much through number symbolism, mascots, cities, players. It's just amazing. And also it's pop culture, and that's what God uses to communicate his signs. Like I'm talking about U2 here. Well, sports are also a big part of American culture, right? But God is, if you are saying, well, you know what, I'm not into sports, it doesn't matter. God, furthermore, has incorporated every conceivable aspect of pop culture into his big picture of science. So there's really no excuse for, Anyway, the point is that the reason for the New England Patriots, as I have explained already, is the pilgrims and the number 11. That's why the Patriots coach, Bill Belichick, the coach of the Patriots for decades, who led them to 6 Super Bowls during this extremely prophetic period that God used them for, was fired on the date 1/11, which hints at 11. That's astounding. It's symbolic of judgment, which is why the end of the trial and the sentencing that was to come, which is symbolic of God judging America for having departed from America as he promised he would to the pilgrims through John Winthrop and his sermon to the 11 ship flotilla pilgrims. Okay. All right. So anyway, I've established this 11/11/2024 date. Okay? When Trump delivered some words at 40 Wall Street. I should say Trump-et delivered 40 words at 40 Wall Street. Now, that's all confirmation for the prophetic significance of this song named 40 on U2's War album. Okay? Because again, the 42nd anniversary involves Trump. And Trump is about 40 Wall Street. Okay? And I'll explain more here. But the lyrics of the song are about the Lord. Because U2 used to be a Christian rock group. I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined and heard my cry. He lifted me up out of the pit, out of the miry clay. I will sing a new song. I will sing a new song. How long to sing this song? How long must we sing this song? How long, how long? Okay, so you set my feet upon a rock. Rock in the Bible is symbolic of Jesus. You made my footsteps firm. Many will see and hear. I will sing a new song. Okay, so that's the last song of the War album. Okay, sing a new song, because there'll be a new song to be sung after the coming war in the Messianic age, in the 1,000 years of peace. That's what this is referring to. But the Lord has also tied into it to confirm it as a prophetic sign, like I've just explained, Trump and 40 Wall Street. Okay, now Trump will be back in Manhattan on the date 110, on the 42nd anniversary of the release of War, with this song named 40. Okay, I think you get the idea. Plus, 40 is an extremely prophetic number in the Bible. The Israelites, before they crossed into the Promised Land, were in the desert for 40 years, for example. So, in other words, 40 is symbolic of the Promised Land. And again, the Pilgrims, the spiritual founding of America, saw their crossing of the Atlantic as being analogous to crossing the Jordan River into the Promised Land. And 40 years is a big part, because the Israelites had to wait 40 years before they were allowed by God to cross into the Promised Land. And why is that? They doubted his promises in the desert. And so God waited a generation to pass before he would allow the Israelites to enter the Promised Land. Because he promised the Promised Land after they got out of Egypt, or before they even got out of Egypt. And then they started to doubt him and complain and disobeyed him. And so that's why, anyway, the 40 years. So you get the idea. It's extremely prophetic. So yeah, 40, the song 40 was the fourth and final song from War, which hints at the 44th president, who will come to power after the predicted suitcase nuke in Manhattan, the beginning of war and civil war. Because the red states aren't going to be happy about that. Not that I predict an actual military conflict. I do not predict that. I predict what Bible prophecy says, which is the persecution of God's true conservatives and Christians, his faithful. I was a big U2 fan when I was 13 or 14 years old, and 14, around that age. I owned the U2 War cassette, as I explained a minute ago, in the day of Sony Walkmans and when infinite music selection was not accessible. This is why the song New Year's Day came to mind when I woke up one morning recently. It was the first song by U2 to chart in the US. Oh, that confirms the prophetic significance too, because God uses firsts for his signs. And like I am saying, U2 is about America. It's the theme in their music. The album Joshua Tree. There's a song in or on the album Joshua Tree named In God's Country, which is about America. So the following album was Rattle and Hum, and it was about America. There's this theme in if you know U2, you know what I'm talking about. And so the first song to chart in the US is pretty significant prophetically, assuming that U2 is prophetic, which I've established is. So that's an amazing detail to point out, is that the War album was the first one in which they had a song that charted in the US. As for the possible significance of the third song released on YouTube's third album, Sunday Bloody Sunday, 3 times 3 days after 110, and 3 times 3 is 9, and God pairs 9 with 110, as I explained. and this date 110 is the anniversary. 3 times 3 days after 110, the anniversary of the third U2 album, with a title consisting of 3 letters, War, will be a Sunday. It'll be Sunday, January 19th. There is evidence that January 19th will be the day that Joe Biden, will step down. The Secret Service code name for Biden is Celtic, which hints at Ireland, which hints at you too. Perhaps something else that is bloody will happen on this day, on January 19th. But in any case, also, Joe Biden, the Celtic, just the other day, on January 4th, gave Bono, the lead singer of U2, the Medal of Freedom. That's amazing. That's amazing. And this is because of the timing. Well, Joe Biden, I guess you could say, is the Irish president, apparently, of Irish descent. And that's symbolic, because we're talking about connecting to the date Biden will step down through the Irish band. As I explained, again, Celtic, the code name for Biden. And it's clear, right? It's 3 times 3 days because it's the third U2 album, made of 3 letters. And, the 3 times 3 days later is a Sunday, and there's a song named Sunday, Bloody Sunday, a very famous song. Okay, the third of the 3 songs released from the album. That's also in itself, by the way, a hint at the third song. So you get the idea now. And we also established earlier how U2 points to the Trinity bomb. Now, this is the I don't know what to say. This is the I don't know what to say. There's no words. If I could, say a word to adequately describe this, I would. But it's amazing beyond words. Mind-boggling, whatever you want to call it. The total length of the album, War, is 42 minutes and 3 seconds. And if you didn't get that, we are talking about, and have been talking about, but this discovery was discovered after I wrote the other emails. We are talking about the 42nd anniversary followed by 3 days to get to the date of the predicted suitcase nuke and beginning of War, the explosion of the suitcase nuke in New York City. 42 years and 3 days after the release of the first song, New Year's Day, which hints at this time of year. Incidentally, I forgot to mention that. The first song, New Year's Day from War, 42 years and 3 days, and the album is 42 minutes and 3 seconds long. I don't know what to say. It's amazing. Be prepared. There's one last thing to say here. There's a song named Drowning Man. Drowning Man. And for those that are Christian, I highly recommend, I assume that you will now, given the recognition that this is prophecy from God, this video, when the prediction comes to pass, go look up the song Drowning Man. This is about Trump, but it's more than about Trump. Because because I mentioned earlier the symbolism of Stormy Daniels and him dying 2 times 17 days, flood symbolism after the date 110 and the sentencing and all that, right? But it's not about Trump. It's about the Christians, and it's about the coming rescue and the rapture. It's about staying strong, holding tightly to what you have. All right? The storm is about to pass. Don't, hold on. Hold on tightly. Okay, so the Lord will come across the sky for his love for you. Okay. Go to Google, get the video with the lyrics shown. And yeah, I think you understand. All right, there's more to say here. Partly it's a summary, and I think you'll really appreciate it. And there's some new information that's it's astounding as well. It's mind-boggling as well. So here is what I wrote a day after the other information was written that I have just gone through. There's more information, in other words, that just keeps coming. January 13th is 3 days after the 42nd anniversary of U2's War album that is 42 minutes and 3 seconds long. Their third album. War is 3 letters. The name U2 comes from the plane crash that was a major incident in the Cold War. U2's new song, Atomic City, refers to Las Vegas, where U2 opened the $2.3 billion Sphere Theater, which has 23 executive suites. 2.3 billion hints at 23. U is the 21st letter. U2 hints at 21 plus 2 equals 23. Las Vegas is nicknamed Atomic City because it is 2 times 30 miles, which hints at 23, from where the first atomic bomb was tested. The Trinity bomb. Which is why War, which has 3 letters, is their third album. Bono, the lead singer of U2, was given the Medal of Freedom by the Irish president, whose nickname by the Secret Service is Celtic, on January 4th, 2025, 3 days after New Year's Day, which hints at 3 days after the 42nd anniversary of the release of the song New Year's Day, the first to chart in the US of U2, by U2. New Year's Day, the first single from War, was U2's first song to chart in the US. New Year's Day was released on January 10th, 110 in 1983. Joshua, in the Bible, led the Israelites into the Promised Land on the date 110. And then they blew trumpets before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. Joshua died at the age of 110. The Twin Towers were 110 stories before they collapsed and cracked the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street, where Washington was inaugurated at the foundation of America, symbolic of the foundation in God being cracked. U2's album that took over the American charts was Joshua Tree. This is why New Year's Day was released on the date 110, 42 years ago, because 42 months is symbolic of the period of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. Bono received the medal from Biden 3 days after New Year's Day because the atomic bomb will explode in New York City 3 days after Trumpet's sentencing in New York City on the date 110, which hints at Joshua and the trumpets that were blown before the walls of security collapsed. The bomb will explode and war will begin 42 years and 3 days after the release of New Year's Day from the album War, that is 42 minutes and 3 seconds long. The last song on the album War, that makes it a total of 42 minutes and 3 seconds, is titled 40. The lyrics of this song are messianic. Truly, this is most definitely a Christian Messiah lyric-inspired song. The Israelites spent 40 years in the desert before Joshua led them into the promised land, where they blew trumpets before the walls of security collapsed in God's judgment. On 9/11, Trumpet called into the local TV news station and inadvertently trumpeted that his tower at 40 Wall Street had become the tallest tower in Lower Manhattan. The concerts at Sphere were for Achtung Baby. Achtung is German for attention. God communicated attention, alert. U2's, which since it's 23, new song Atomic City, played at the $2.3 billion theater, pointed attention to the Trinity bomb that was tested 2 times 30 miles away. The song Refugee on War speaks of America being a promised land. This also hints at the mass evacuation from Manhattan Island. Also, when the Israelites crossed over into the promised land, they had prior to that evacuated Egypt. U2 opened the $2.3 billion Sphere in Las Vegas with its 23 executive suites. On September 29th, 2023, exactly 2 times 230 days before New Year's Day on January 1st, 2025, which was when a Cybertruck exploded in Las Vegas. I'll repeat that. So they opened the theater, the famous revolutionary new spherical theater named Sphere, that has 23 executive suites and cost a famous $2.3 billion, and U2 hints at 23. That was opened in Las Vegas, exactly 2 times 230, which hints at 2 23s, before New Year's Day on January 1st, which was when a Cybertruck exploded in Las Vegas. 223, which is what is hinted at with 2 times 230, is the 48th prime number, which hints at Obama becoming the 48th president. 2 times 2 times 3, which is hinted at with 2 times 230, days after the explosion in Las Vegas on New Year's Day, is the predicted suitcase nuke explosion in New York City. A truck may be involved in the predicted explosion. In fact, there may be 2, because on this same New Year's Day, we had another truck attack in New Orleans, the 6+6+6th state. There might be 2 suitcase nukes, or there might be 2 trucks with bombs inside them. This 2 times 230 days connection is also 126.03% of a year. That's prophetic because this number 1,260 appears 7 times in Bible prophecy, symbolizing the period of the Antichrist. It's a period of time in Bible prophecy, and so is this 126.0%. But it is also 126.03%, and again, we are talking about 3 seconds, which is a 0.03, after the 42nd anniversary of the release of the album War with New Year's Day. I just realized something. That's astounding. I didn't realize that till I just read this. Because 42 years is prophetic because it hints at the 42 months in Bible prophecy that symbolizes the period of the Antichrist, and 42 months in biblical year terms, prophetic years, is 1,260 days. In other words, this number right here, 126.0, gives us the 42, and then we have the 0.03, which gives us the 0.03 seconds after the 42nd anniversary. This is amazing beyond words. And this connection gets us again to the opening of the Sphere Theater, for which the band U2 created a new song, Atomic City, which points to the Trinity bomb that was tested 2 times 30 miles away from the 2.3 billion sphere that has 23 executive suites. And U2 hints at 23. Hopefully I explained that well. I am just amazed. I cannot believe this. I mean, I don't say that language. I take that language back. It is all about believing. And this is amazing beyond words. I don't know what to say. Okay, so because again, it's about this 42 minutes and 3 seconds long album, and that's exactly what's hinted at with this connection right here. Because the 1,260 hints at 42, because the 2 are synonymous in Bible prophecy, the 42 months and the 1,260 days. And it's a 0.3, and again, that's 42 minutes and 0.03 seconds. It's amazing. U2's War album is 42 minutes and 3 seconds long. From the release of New Year's Day, the song, it is 42 years and 3 days to the predicted suitcase nuke explosion in Manhattan. The song Seconds on the War album is about exploding a bomb. The lyrics mention that a bomb can be assembled in Times Square. The lyrics also mention, quote, atomic bomb, unquote. I mean, it's not only that, though. The name of the title of the song, because of the chorus, it takes a second to say goodbye. Takes a second to say goodbye. Oh, say goodbye. Oh. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the U2 and all that. But anyway, the title of the song is Seconds. And that's the detail, the prophetic detail in the connection here. It's 42 minutes and 3 seconds because it's 42 years and 3 days to the predicted suitcase nuke explosion in Manhattan. And this song Seconds talks about building a bomb in Times Square. I'll just prove that to you here. It says, in an apartment on Times Square, you can assemble them anywhere. I mean, they're talking about building a bomb. And it talks about pressing the button in another part of this song, right? It's clearly, push the button and pull the plug. Okay, so it's definitely talking about bombs. Furthermore, it says right here, and they are doing the atomic bomb. It talks about bombs, okay? And yes, they're doing the atomic bomb. They want you to sing along. Okay. What more needs to be said here? We are definitely looking at an atomic bomb exploding 42 years and 3 days after the release of the War album with New Year's Day. And again, this is the new revelation here too, is that New Year's Day this year was pointed to because of the event, the incident in Las Vegas, and its connection to U2 opening the Sphere Theater in Las Vegas, Atomic City. And then from that day, New Year's Day, it's 3 days to the Irish president giving Bono the medal, but it's also 2 times 2 times 3 days to the predicted suitcase nuke in Manhattan. But New Year's Day is also 2 times 230 days after they opened the Sphere Theater. Okay. As my friend put it, it's such stunning confirmation. And by the way, all of this, the knowledge of January 13th being the date for the predicted suitcase nuke or dirty bombs was not learned through this revelation regarding U2 and the album War. This is a second witness confirmation, which the Bible says is required. But there were also many, many other second witnesses even before this revelation of these connections involving the U2 War album. And that was derived from God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, that has been in the making for years. Like I said, I believe at some point in this video, perhaps in another video, it has been known that God has been pointing to a bomb explosion in New York City since July of 2019 with the Manhattan blackout, prophetic sign. That was the wake-up call to recognize what is going on. In retrospect, we could even see that prior to that, God had been pointing to this predicted consequential bomb explosion even before 2019. All right, just for example, the false missile alert in Hawaii in 2018, and by the way, that was January 13th, that date, which is exactly 84 months to this predicted dirty bomb in Manhattan, and 84 is the equivalent of the word bomb in Hebrew gematria. It's also the equivalent of the name Obama, which hints at Obama. All right, there's one more discovery here to add on to the end here. It was just discovered that the album War was released on February 28th, 1983, exactly 36 weeks before the Capitol building was bombed by the May 19th Communist Organization. And I explain in the other video, which is about this, that Barack Obama at the time was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization. I'm not going to get into it again in this video. That bombing, the bombing of the Capitol building in 1983, was 15 days, which is 21,600 minutes, 21,600 minutes after the Beirut bombings, the Beirut bombings. That is because the Beirut bombings, which was when the U.S. Marine barracks were bombed in Beirut, is hinting at Barack. The name Barack is equal to 216 in English gematria, which is what 21,600 minutes hint at. And so the Beirut barracks bombings connect with the name equivalent of Barack to the bombing of the Capitol building by the May 19th Communist Organization, because Barack was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization. Now, this 36 weeks exact connection is profound because, well, the name Barack is equal to, like I said, 216, and Barack Obama was born on the 216th day of the calendar year, and 216 is 6 times 6 times 6, which hints at the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, 666. That's also what in God's signs the number 36 hints at, because 36 is 6 times 6. but also it hints at 3 6s. And also it is 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And also the 36th triangular number is 666. In a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666. And 1 plus 2 plus 3 all the way up to 36 equals 666. And that's why the War album was released, which, as I've explained in this video, is pointing to the beginning of war with the detonation of the suitcase nuke in Manhattan. And that's why the release of this album was exactly 36 weeks to the day that the Capitol building was bombed, because Obama will rise to power as a result of the coming predicted suitcase nuke bomb in New York City. Also, 36 weeks is 252 days. And in Bible prophecy, in the most central prophecy in the Bible, 2,520 days is symbolic of the period of the Antichrist. And so 252 days is symbolic of this. In other words, this is clear confirmation that Barack Obama is the Antichrist who was part of the May 19th communist organization. I'll go one step further, actually. The Capitol building bombing in 1983 occurred exactly 4 times 4 months before the release of the best-selling single of all of history, and God uses extremes and records for his signs, the We Are the World single, with the all-star of baby boomer, late baby boomer generation singers raising money for food aid, famine, food money for Ethiopia. All right, the song was written and produced, well, it was written by Michael Jackson, and Michael Jackson grew up at 2300 Jackson Street, not because his family's name is Jackson, it's a coincidence from God, and the initials MJ equal 23 in simple English gematria, and God is using this too. For example, also Michael Jordan, who wore number 23, and also Michael J. Fox and Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House. Well, anyway, the reason for it being equal to 23 and why that's relevant is because Barack Obama, the basketball president, wore jersey number 23 in high school. Also, the mark of the Antichrist, which he will enforce, changes a person's 23 pairs of chromosomes. And he will enforce the mark of the Antichrist through restricting the buying and selling of food, as it is described in Bible prophecy, to only those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist, the so-called good citizens. And that's what's being hinted at with the food aid song, We Are the World. And so, and that song too is somewhat Antichrist in itself, the We Are the World. You know what, I've made another video about that, so I won't get into any more details. So, but the thing is too, the song, the aid was for Ethiopia, and God is using a play on the Ethiopian in the book of Acts in the Bible to point to Barack Obama, who was born in East Africa, near Ethiopia. The Ethiopian in the Greek concordance, the word for the Ethiopian, is G128, which is why this most famous night in music history, when these celebrity singers came together after the American Music Awards to record We Are the World, was the date 128, January 28th in 1985. And that date, and the song written by MJ, which equals 23, was exactly 23 months after the release of U2's album War. And one thing that I feel should be emphasized here to end this video is that God pairs 23 and 44 together in his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections to confirm the signs and connections. Because the Antichrist is the 44th president and also the basketball president who wore jersey number 23. And this is how God's big picture of big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter, as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. But if we think about it, one simple way in which he would provide a second witness for us is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 23 and 44. Now, as I mentioned, the release of the War album was exactly 23 months before the recording of We Are the World, and also the release of War was exactly 36 weeks or 252 days before the bombing of the Capitol building, which identified Barack. The bombing of the Capitol building, again, was exactly 4 times 4 months to the release of We Are the World. And that 4 times 4 months hints at the 44th president, which pairs with the 23 months, as the basketball president wore jersey number 23. And once again, the name U2 hints at 23. U is the 21st letter, and 2 adds to the 21 to give us 23. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, Jesus loves you, unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. You need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel, and do it now in case you aren't able to later.